Hello friends, welcome back to this quiet corner of forgotten stories, where the past murmurs its secrets to help us unwind, reflect, or perhaps drift gently into sleep. Tonight, we journey to the vast and frozen world of the Arctic, a place where the wind cuts like a blade, where the snow sings beneath your feet, and where the Inuit, a resilient people deeply tied to the rhythms of nature, have woven rituals as strange as they are captivating. So, grab a blanket, settle in, and let the icy breath of the Arctic carry you into a tale that feels both ancient and alive. If you're new here or just love these soothing dives into history, please hit that subscribe button, it really helps keep these stories flowing. Now let's step into the snow. Imagine a world where the horizon stretches endlessly white, where the sun might vanish for months or blaze through the night without setting. This is the Arctic, a land of extremes, that shaped the Inuit into masters of survival. The Inuit, whose name means the people in their language of Inuit, have lived for thousands of years across what we now call Canada, Greenland, Alaska, and parts of Siberia. Their homeland spans tundras and ice flows, from the shores of Baffin Island to the windswept coasts of Nunavut. Here, temperatures can plummet to 30 degrees below (0°C, and the sea itself freezes into a glittering highway for hunters. Yet, in this harsh world, the Inuit found not just survival but meaning, crafting a culture rich with stories, songs, and rituals that tied them to the land, the sea, and the spirits that dwelled in both. Let's picture a moment. It's a winter night, perhaps 1,000 years ago. A family huddles in an igloo, a dome of snow blocks that glows faintly from the light of a seal oil lamp. The air smells of burning fat and smoked fish. Outside, the wind howls, but inside, it's warm, almost womb-like. A grandmother, her face, etched with lines like the cracks in spring ice, begins to speak. Her voice is soft but steady, weaving a tale of Sedna, the sea goddess who controls the animals they hunt. The children listen wide-eyed as she describes rituals to honor Sedna, to ensure the seals return each year. This is the heart of Inuit life, a deep respect for the world around them, expressed through practices that feel both sacred and practical. The Inuit saw the world as alive. Every rock, every gust of wind, every seal that surfaced carried a spirit. Their rituals weren't just ceremonies, they were conversations with the land, ways to maintain balance in a place where a single mistake, a failed hunt, a sudden storm could mean starvation or death. But this wasn't a culture of fear. It was one of resilience, of finding joy in the smallest moments. A shared meal, a song under the stars, a child's first step on the ice. Their rituals, some of which we'll explore in this series, were born from this dance between survival and spirit. Let's meet someone from this world. Picture Nunik, a young man from a village on the shores of what we now call Hudson Bay. Around the year 1200, Nunik is 16, his hands already calloused, from hauling nets and carving bone. His family depends on him, but the winter has been cruel. The seals are scarce, and the caribou herds have wandered far. One night the village gathers in the largest igloo, the air thick with tension. The elders speak of a ritual, one that might call the animals back. Nunik listens as they describe offerings to the sea, chants to appease the spirits. He's nervous but proud he's been chosen to help. As the firelight flickers on his face, he feels the weight of his people's survival resting on his shoulders. This ritual, like many in Inuit culture, wasn't just about the act itself. It was about community, about trust in the unseen forces that governed their world. The Inuit believed that everything was connected: humans, animals, spirits, even the ice itself. To break a taboo, like disrespecting a hunted animal, could anger the spirits and bring misfortune. To perform a ritual correctly could restore harmony. Nunik's role in this moment would test his courage, but it would also bind him closer to his people and their traditions. The Arctic shaped these rituals in ways we can barely imagine. The endless winter nights where darkness cloaks the world for months gave rise to ceremonies that celebrated light and warmth. The brief, blazing summers, when the tundra bloomed with color, inspired dances and songs of gratitude. Every ritual was a response to the land's rhythm, a way to navigate its beauty and its dangers. As we move forward, we'll explore these practices, some beautiful, some unsettling, that defined the Inuit way of life. But let's linger here for a moment, with Nunik and his village. The ritual they're preparing for involves the entire community. The women prepare offering strips of seal fat, carefully wrapped in sinew. The men carve small figures from bone, symbols of the animals they seek. The children, too, have a role. They sing, their voices rising like smoke into the cold air. This isn't just a ceremony, it's a shared hope. A belief that their actions can sway the spirits, that the seals will return, that the spring will come. And as Nunik steps into the snow, his breath clouding in the frigid air, he feels something shift inside him, a sense of purpose, of belonging. This is the world we're entering, one where rituals weren't just tradition but survival, where every act carried meaning. As we move into the next chapter, we'll delve deeper into the spiritual heart of the Inuit, into the beliefs that gave these rituals their power. The Arctic is vast, but its stories are intimate, woven from the lives of people like Nunik, who faced the ice with courage and reverence. So, let's keep walking, let the snow crunch beneath our feet, and listen for the whispers of the spirits that still linger in this frozen world. The veil of ice, the spirituality of the Inuit as the stars fade above Nunik's village, their light swallowed by the endless Arctic night. The echoes of the ritual linger in the air. The offerings to Sedna, carefully placed in the icy waters, were more than a plea for seals to return. They were a thread in the intricate tapestry of Inuit spirituality, a way of speaking to a world alive with unseen forces. The cold still bites at Nunik's fingers as he returns to his igloo, the memory of the chants humming in his mind like a distant song. This wasn't just a single act but part of a deeper belief system, one that bound the Inuit to the land, the sea, and the spirits that shaped their lives. Tonight, we step deeper into this world, pulling back the veil of ice to explore the spiritual heart of the Inuit, where every ritual was a bridge between the human and the divine. The Inuit world was not one of gods seated on distant thrones. Their spirituality was as raw and immediate as the Arctic itself. Every gust of wind, every crack in the ice, every ripple in the water carried a spiritan inwa, as they called it. These spirits weren't abstract, they were as real as the seal fat burning in the lamp, as tangible as the snow beneath their boots. To the Inuit, the world was a living web, and humans were but one part of it, no more important than the caribou, the raven, or the frozen sea. Their rituals, like the one Nunik joined, were acts of respect, ways to maintain balance in a world that could turn harsh in an instant. Let's linger with Nunik for a moment, as he lies on his furs, the warmth of the igloo wrapping around him like a cocoon. He's still young, only 16, but he's beginning to understand the weight of these beliefs. His grandmother, Sila, is the one who teaches him most. Her voice, weathered by years of Arctic winters, carries stories of the Angakuk, the shamans, who could speak to spirits, heal the sick, or call animals to the hunters. She tells him of the great spirit Sila, not a person, but the air itself, the breath of the world that carries life and storm alike. Sila is in everything, she says, her eyes glinting in the lamplight. When you feel the wind, you feel Sila. When you breathe, you share her spirit. This belief in Sila, the spirit of the air, was central to the Inuit. It wasn't worship in the way we might think of it, but a recognition that the world was alive and aware. Sila could be kind, bringing clear skies for hunting, or fierce, unleashing blizzards that buried entire villages. Rituals to honor Sila were simple but profound. A hunter might pause before setting out, offering a quiet word to the wind, asking for safe passage. A mother might sing to her child, her voice blending with the gusts outside, tying the newborn to the spirit of the air. These acts weren't grand ceremonies but daily threads woven into the fabric of life. Let's imagine another figure, a woman named Kala, who lived a generation before Nunik, in a village further north, near what we now call Ellesmere Island. Kala was no shaman, but she was known for her dreams, vivid visions that came in the long winter darkness. One night, she dreamed of a great storm, the sky swirling with colors like the aurora, and a voice that spoke of hunger in the village. When she woke, her hands trembled, not from cold but from the weight of what she'd seen. She told the elders, who listened carefully. Dreams, to the Inuit, were not mere fancies. They were messages, glimpses into the spirit world. The elders decided a ritual was needed, one to calm Sila's anger and bring back the animals. The ritual was unlike the one Nunik would later perform. It began with the entire village gathering under the open sky, their faces stung by the wind. Kala stood at the center, her voice unsteady at first, recounting her dream. The elders burned tufts of caribou hair, the smoke curling upward as an offering to Sila. The people sang, their voices rising and falling like waves, a melody that seemed to blend with the howl of the wind. Kala felt the eyes of her community on her, not with doubt but with trust. They believed her dream was a warning, and their song was a plea for mercy. This wasn't superstition, it was survival. The Inuit knew the Arctic's moods better than anyone. A storm could trap hunters, a failed hunt could starve a family, a sudden thaw could crack the ice beneath a sled. Their spirituality was born from this reality, a way to navigate a world where nature held all the power. Rituals like the one Kala joined were acts of humility, acknowledgements that humans were not masters but partners in the Arctic's dance. The spirits weren't always kind though. Let's follow Kala's story a little further. The ritual seemed to work. The storm passed, and a small herd of caribou appeared days later, their hooves crunching through the snow. But Kala's dreams didn't stop. She began to see a figure. In them, a woman with hair like seaweed, her fingers severed, her eyes cold as the sea. This was Sedna, the goddess of the ocean, whose story is central to Inuit spirituality. Sedna was both creator and destroyer, the one who gave the seals, walruses and whales but could withhold them if angered. Kala's dreams grew darker, and the elders began to whisper of a taboo broken, a hunter who had disrespected a seal's spirit by wasting its meat. The village prepared another ritual, this time more urgent. Kala, though not an Angakuk, was asked to join the shaman, an old man named Taktu whose hands were gnarled like driftwood. Taktu led the community to the sea's edge, where the ice groaned under their weight. He entered a trance, his body swaying as he sang, calling to Sedna. The villagers placed offerings, bones carved with intricate patterns, strips of seal skin into the water. Kala watched, her heart heavy, as Taktu's voice grew hoarse, pleading for forgiveness. The ritual lasted through the night, the cold seeping into their bones, but no one left. They believed their survival depended on it. This connection to Sedna reveals another layer of Inuit spirituality, the importance of balance. Every animal taken, every resource used, required respect. A hunter who failed to honor a seal's spirit might anger Sedna, and the sea would grow empty. A community that ignored the spirits risked losing their place in the world's web. Rituals were the Inuits' way of mending these bonds, of ensuring the cycle of life continued. Back with Nunnik years after Kalos' time, these beliefs still hold strong. He's heard the stories of Sedna, of Sela, of the spirits that live in every crack and crevice of the Arctic. As he grows, he begins to notice the small rituals woven into daily life. The way his mother sprinkles a pinch of snow into the fire before cooking, a quiet offering to the spirits. The way his father pauses to touch the ice before a hunt, as if asking permission. These acts are as natural as breathing, yet they carry the weight of centuries. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctic's spiritual heart, please subscribe. It really helps keep these stories alive. Let's keep moving though, because the spirits are calling us deeper. The Inuit spirituality wasn't just about grand rituals, it was in the quiet moments. A fisherman might carve a small amulet from bone, whispering a prayer as he shaped it, believing it would protect him from the sea's wrath. A child might be taught to listen to the wind, to hear Sila's voice in its rise and fall. These practices weren't separate from life. They were life itself, a constant dialogue with the world around them. As Nunnik grows, he begins to understand this. The ritual he joined wasn't a one-time event, but part of a larger rhythm. He starts to notice the patterns, the way the elders watch the sky, the way the women prepare offerings with care, the way the children's songs seem to echo the land itself. That he's learning that spirituality isn't just about the spirits, but about the people, about the trust and love that hold a community together in the face of the Arctic's unrelenting cold. This spiritual world, so vivid and alive, sets the stage for the rituals we'll explore next. The Angakuk, the shamans like Taktu, were the bridge between the human and the spirit worlds. Their rituals both awe-inspiring and, at times, unsettling. As we step into the next chapter, we'll follow their chants, their trances, and the strange, powerful ceremonies that could sway the spirits themselves. The Arctic is a place of mystery, and its spiritual heart beats strong, carrying us forward into the stories of those who spoke with the unseen. The song of the spirits, the ritual of the Angakukas, the echoes of the village's chants fade into the Arctic night. Nunnik lies awake, the rhythm of the elders' voices still pulsing in his chest. The ritual by the sea where he placed offerings for Sedna was his first step into the spiritual world of his people. A world where the veil between human and spirit is thin, almost transparent. But there are those among the Inuit who cross that veil entirely, who speak directly to the spirits and carry their messages back to the living. These are the Angakuk, the shamans, whose rituals are both a lifeline and a mystery, their songs weaving through the ice like threads of starlight. Tonight, we follow their path, stepping deeper into the strange and powerful ceremonies that defined the Inuits' connection to the unseen. Nunnik has heard stories of the Angakuk since he was a child, curled up beside his grandmother's lamp. She spoke of men and women who could travel to the spirit world, their bodies still but their souls soaring through realms of ice and shadow. The Angakuk were not gods themselves but conduits, chosen by the spirits or sometimes forced into the role by visions they couldn't ignore. Their rituals were the heart of the Inuit spiritual life, moments when the community held its breath, trusting the shaman to mend what was broken. Whether it was a failed hunt, a lingering illness, or a storm that refused to relent. Let's step back to Kalas' time, a generation before Nunnik, to the village near Ellesmere Island, where the air itself seemed to hum with unseen forces. Kala, the dreamer from our last chapter, is now a young woman, her visions growing sharper, more insistent. She's not an Angakuk, but her dreams have drawn the attention of Taktu, the village's shaman. Taktu is old, his face like weathered driftwood, his eyes sharp as a harpoon's tip. He's seen things others can only imagine, spirits that dance in the aurora, Sedna's underwater lair, the great bear that guards the stars. But he's growing frail, and the village whispers that a new Angakuk must be chosen soon. Kala feels a knot in her stomach. She doesn't want this burden, but the spirits, it seems, have other plans. One winter night, when the darkness is so thick it feels like a weight, the village gathers for a ritual led by Taktu. A child, barely 5, has fallen ill, her breath shallow, her skin hot despite the cold. The elders fear a spirit has claimed her, perhaps angered by a broken taboo. Taktu prepares the kagik, a large communal igloo used for ceremonies, its walls glowing faintly from the seal oil lamps. The air smells of burning fat and sage-like herbs gathered in the brief summer. The villagers sit in a circle, their faces tense, their hands clasped. Kala is there, her heart racing, unsure why Taktu insisted she join him at the center. The ritual begins with a drum, its beat slow and deep, like the pulse of the Arctic itself. Tak-Tu holds the drum, a circle of caribou hide stretched over bone, and strikes it with a stick carved from walrus tusk. The sound reverberates, filling the Kagik with a rhythm that feels alive, as if the spirits themselves are listening. He begins to sing, his voice low and guttural, then rising, sharp and wild, like the cry of a loon across the ice. The words are ancient, a mix of Inuktitut and sounds that seem to come from somewhere beyond. Kala feels the air grow heavy, as if the spirits are pressing closer. Drawn by Tak-Tu's call, this is the Angaku's gift, to enter a trance, to leave the body behind and journey to the spirit world. Tak-Tu's eyes close, his body sways, and the villagers watch in silence, their breaths shallow. Kala notices the child's mother, her face streaked with tears, clutching a small amulet of bone. The ritual is not just for the child but for the entire community, a reminder that their survival depends on harmony with the unseen. Tak-Tu's song shifts, now pleading, now commanding, as he seeks the spirit causing the illness. He speaks of a hunter who failed to honor a seal, leaving its bones scattered on the ice instead of returning them to the sea. The spirit, offended, has taken the child as payment. Kala's role is small but vital. Tak-Tu has asked her to hold a cord of sinew, one end tied to his wrist, the other anchored to a stake in the snow. The cord is a lifeline, a way to guide him back from the spirit world. Her hands tremble as she grips it, feeling the weight of his trust. The drumbeat grows faster, Tak-Tu's voice rising into a wail, and then his body slumps, and for a moment Kala fears he's gone too far, lost in the realms beyond. But then he stirs, his eyes opening, clouded as if still seeing another world. He speaks, his voice hoarse. The spirit has been appeased, but an offering must be made. The villagers act quickly. They carve a small figure from seal bone, a likeness of the child, and place it in a shallow hole in the ice, covered with snow. They sing, their voices softer now, a lullaby to soothe the spirit. The child's fever breaks the next day, and the village breathes easier, though Kala feels a new weight. Tak-Tu looks at her, his gaze heavy with meaning. The spirits know you, he says, and she shivers, not from the cold. This ritual, strange and intense, was one of many led by the Ink. Some were healers, like Tak-Tu, coaxing spirits to release their grip on the sick. Others were seers, predicting where caribou would roam or when the ice would hold. Their rituals could be beautiful songs that seemed to dance with the aurora, unsettling, like the times they wrestled with malevolent spirits in trances that left them trembling. The Angakuk were both revered and feared, for their power came at a cost. A failed ritual could mean disaster, and the spirits were not always forgiving. Back with Inuit years later, the Angakuk are still a presence in his village. He's grown, now a hunter in his own right. But he remembers the stories of Tak-Tu and others like him. One winter, when the seals are scarce again, the village turns to their own Angakuk, a woman named Otuat. She's younger than Tak-Tu was, her hair still black as raven feathers, but her presence commands the same respect. Inuit watches as she prepares for a ritual, her hands steady as she ties a drum with sinew, her voice calm as she speaks to the elders. He feels a pang of awe, remembering his own small role in the offering to Sedna. Atuate's ritual is different, yet it carries the same weight. She doesn't enter a trance but leads the village in a song, a call to the spirits of the air and sea. The men carve bone charms, the women weave nets of sinew, and the children scatter snow in patterns that mimic the stars. Inuit joins in, his voice blending with the others, feeling the connection to his ancestors. To Kala, to Tak-Tu, the ritual is a reminder that the Inuit spirituality is not just in the grand moments but in the shared ones, in the voices raised, together against the cold. If you're loving this dive into the Arctic's mysteries, please subscribe. It helps keep these stories alive. Let's keep moving though, because the spirits are leading us somewhere new. The Angaku's rituals were not just about solving problems, they were about connection, about weaving the community into the larger web of the world. As we step into the next chapter, we'll follow the aurora itself, that shimmering veil in the sky that inspired some of the Inuits' most breathtaking ceremonies. The Arctic night is alive with light, and its dancers are calling us forward, into the stories of those who moved with the stars. Dance under the aurora celestial celebrations. The drumbeat of Atuate's ritual still echoes in Inuit's ears as he steps out into the Arctic night, the snow crunching softly under his boots. The air is sharp, carrying the faint scent of burning seal fat from the igloo, but it's the sky that stops him in his tracks. Above, the aurora borealis unfurls like a river of light, green and violet ribbons dancing across the stars. To Inuit, it's more than a spectacle. It's a sign, a whisper, from the spirits that the world is alive, watching. The Inuit have long looked to the aurora, not just with aura but with purpose, weaving its glow into rituals that celebrate the heavens and bind the community to the cosmos. Tonight we follow those shimmering lights, stepping into the ceremonies that turned the Arctic sky into a stage for the sacred. The aurora, known to the Inuit as Aksaniak or sky dancers, was no mere natural phenomenon. It was a realm of spirits, a place where the dead might linger, where ancestors played games of light or sent warnings to the living. The Inuit believed the aurora could carry messages, its colors shifting with the moods of the spirits. A green glow might signal peace, a red one danger. Children were told not to whistle at the lights, lest the spirits descend and carry them away. Yet the aurora was also a source of joy, inspiring rituals that brought the village together under its radiant canopy, moments of celebration that warmed the long winter nights. Let's return to Kala's village, a generation before Inuit, where the aurora's glow feels like a living presence. Kala, now in her 20s, has grown accustomed to her dreams, though they still unsettle her. The Angakok Taktu has taken her under his wing, teaching her to read the signs in the sky and the ice. One night, as the aurora pulses brighter than usual, its greens streaked with rare purples, Taktu calls the village to a kagik for a ritual unlike any Kala has seen. This isn't about appeasing an angry spirit or healing the sick. It's a celebration, a way to honor the sky dancers and give thanks for the community's survival through another winter. The kagik is larger than usual, its snow walls carved with patterns that mimic the aurora's curves. Inside, the air is warm, thick with the scent of burning herbs and the murmur of voices. The villagers sit in a wide circle, their faces lit by the flickering lamps. Taktu stands at the center, his drum in hand, but tonight he's joined by the women of the village, including Kala's mother Nyack, whose voice is known for its strength. They carry kilot, drums made of caribou hide, their surfaces taut and resonant. Kala sits near the edge, her hands clutching a small bone charm, her heart racing with a mix of nerves and excitement. The ritual begins with a song, soft at first, like the wind brushing over snow. Nyack leads, her voice rising in a melody that seems to weave with the aurora's light outside. The others join, their voices blending into a chorus that feels like it could lift the igloo into the sky. The drums follow, their beats quick and light, mimicking the flicker of the aurora. Taktu raises his hands, his voice calling to the spirits of the sky, thanking them for their light, for guiding hunters home, for reminding the people they are never alone. Kala feels the rhythm in her chest, as if her heartbeat has joined the song. This ceremony, known as the Aurora Dance, was rare but cherished. It wasn't tied to survival like the offerings to Sedna or the trances of the Angakok. Instead, it was a moment of joy, a reminder that even in the Arctic's harsh embrace there was beauty to celebrate. The villagers would dance, their movements slow and deliberate, mimicking the sway of the lights above. Children giggled as they spun, their mittened hands tracing arcs in the air. Elders, too, joined in, their steps careful but proud, their faces creased with smiles. Kala, usually shy, found herself swaying, her body moving with the drum's pulse, her fears melting under the aurora's glow. But the ritual wasn't without its deeper meaning. Taktu spoke of the aurora as a bridge to the ancestors, a place where the spirits of the dead played a game like soccer, kicking a walrus skull across the sky. The lights were their movements, their laughter, their reminders to the living to hold fast to their traditions. He told a story of a time when the aurora vanished for months, a sign that the spirits were angry, and how a great dance brought them back, the sky erupting in colors brighter than any before. Kala listened, her eyes fixed on the snow walls, imagining the spirits watching from above. Let's shift to Nunik's time, years later, where the aurora still holds its magic. Nunik is now a young man, his hands steadier, his heart still full of the lessons from his first ritual by the sea. One night, as the aurora blazes Otuet, the village's Angakok calls for a similar celebration. Nunik's village gathers in their own kagik, the air alive with anticipation. His sister, Isla, barely 12, is chosen to lead the children's dance, her face glowing with pride. Nunik watches, his chest tight with a mix of nostalgia and wonder, remembering the stories his grandmother told of sky dancers and their games. The ritual begins much like Kala's, with drums and songs, but Otuat adds something new. She carries a bundle of feathers, raven and owl, tied with sinew, and waves them in patterns that mimic the aurora's flow. The feathers, she says, carry the breath of Sila, the air spirit, linking the village to the sky. The villagers sing, their voices rising like smoke, and Nunik joins in, his deep voice blending with Ila's higher one. The dance that follows is chaotic but joyful, with children spinning and elders clapping, their laughter echoing in the kagik. For a moment, the Arctic's cold feels distant, replaced by the warmth of community. If you're enjoying this journey under the Arctic lights, please subscribe. It helps keep these stories shining. Let's keep dancing though, because the aurora is leading us onward. The Aurora Dance wasn't just about celebration. It was a way to strengthen the bonds between the living and the spirits, between the present and the past. Nunik feels this as he dances, his boots scuffing the snow floor, his breath clouding in the air. He thinks of his grandmother Sila, now gone, and wonders if she's among the sky dancers, her spirit playing in the lights. The thought comforts him, easing the ache of her loss. The ritual, like all Inuit ceremonies, is a reminder that nothing is truly lost, that the spirits and ancestors are always near. But not all aurora rituals were so joyful. In Kala's village, Taktu once led a different ceremony, when the aurora turned blood red, a rare and ominous sign. The villagers gathered in fear, believing the spirits were warning of danger, a coming storm, a failed hunt, or worse. Tak-2 entered a trance, his drums silent, his body still, as he sought answers in the spirit world. The ritual was tense, the air heavy with whispered prayers. Kala, still learning, held the sinew cord again, her hands steady despite her fear. When Tak-2 returned, he spoke of a taboo broken, a hunter who had mocked the aurora. The village made offerings, carved bones, seal fat, buried in the snow to appease the spirits, and the red faded from the sky. These stories, of joy and warning, show the aurora's power in Inuit life. It was a guide, a muse, a messenger. Its rituals brought the community together, whether in celebration or caution, reminding them of their place in the cosmos. As Nunik dances, he feels this connection, not just to the sky but to Kala, to Tak-2, to all those who came before. The aurora's light binds them, a thread through time. As we step into the next chapter, we'll follow another thread, one that leads to the sea and the rituals that honored the animals the Inuit depended on. The aurora fades, but its glow lingers, guiding us toward the offerings and chants that kept the balance with the ocean spirits. The Arctic is calling, and its stories are far from over. The silence of the hunt, offerings to the CS, the aurora's glow fades behind Nunik. Its light still lingers in his mind, a reminder of the spirits dancing above his village. The warmth of the kagik and the rhythm of the drums stay with him, as he steps back into the cold, his boots sinking into the snow. But the Arctic is not just a place of sky and stars. It's a world ruled by the sea, vast and unyielding, where the Inuit found their sustenance and their stories. The seals, walruses, and whales that sustained Nunik's people were gifts from Sedna, the sea goddess, whose moods could bring bounty or famine. Tonight, we slip beneath the ice, into the rituals that honored the animals of the hunt, rituals steeped in respect and silence, where every offering was a plea for balance with the ocean's spirits. The sea was the lifeblood of the Inuit. Frozen edges provided paths for hunters, its depths offered food to survive the endless winters, but every animal taken came with a cost, a debt to Sedna and the spirits that dwelled in each creature. The Inuit believed that animals had souls, Inwa, just like humans, and to hunt was to enter a sacred agreement. A seal gave its life willingly, but only if treated with respect. A hunter who wasted meat or failed to honor the animal's spirit risked angering Sedna, who could close the sea, leaving the village hungry. The rituals that followed a hunt were as vital as the hunt itself, quiet acts of gratitude that wove the people into the cycle of life. Let's return to Kala's village, a generation before Nunike, where the sea's presence is as constant as the wind. Kala, now a young woman shaped by her dreams and Tak-2's teachings, stands at the edge of the frozen shore. The air smells of salt and frost, and the ice groans as it shifts under the tide. A hunt has just returned, the sleds heavy with seals, their sleek bodies glistening in the faint light. But there's tension in the village. One of the younger hunters, a brash man named Yuki, has been careless. He left a seal's bones scattered on the ice. A taboo that could offend Sedna. Kala feels a chill, not just from the cold but from the weight of what this might mean. The elders call for a ritual to restore balance, and Tak-2 the Angakok takes the lead. The village gathers at the water's edge, where the ice meets the open sea, a place both sacred and dangerous. The hunters stand in a line, their harpoons laid carefully on the snow, a sign of respect. The women, including Kala's mother, prepare offerings, strips of seal fat wrapped in sinew, small carvings of fish and seals made from bone. Kala is tasked with carrying a sealskin pouch filled with dried herbs, their sharp scent mingling with the sea's saltiness. The ritual is quiet, almost silent, a stark contrast to the joyous aurora dance. This is a moment of humility, a recognition of the sea's power. Tak-2 begins with a chant, his voice low and steady, like the lapping of waves. He speaks to Sedna, asking forgiveness for Yuki's mistake, promising the village will honor her gifts. The hunters step forward, one by one, to place the offerings into a hole carved in the ice. Kala watches as the bundles sink into the dark water, disappearing into Sedna's realm. The silence is heavy, broken only by the creak of ice and the soft murmur of Tak-2's chant. The villagers believe that Sedna is listening, her severed fingers stirring the currents below, deciding whether to accept their plea. This ritual, known as the sea offering, was one of many that honored the animals of the hunt. After every successful hunt, the Inuit performed small acts of gratitude. A hunter might pour fresh water into a seal's mouth, a gift to its spirit, ensuring it would return to the sea and tell others to come. Bones were carefully cleaned and returned to the water, never left on land where they might offend. These acts were not just tradition but necessity, a way to maintain the delicate balance with Sedna and her creatures. Let's move forward to Nunik's time, where these rituals remain vital. Nunik, now a seasoned hunter at 18, knows the weight of the sea's gifts. He's seen winters when the seals vanished, when the village's stores dwindled, and the elders spoke of Sedna's anger. One spring, after a successful hunt, Nunik joins a ritual much like the one Kala witnessed. The village gathers at the shore, the air warmer now, the ice beginning to crack under the sun's return. Otuet, The Angakuk leads the ceremony, her voice softer than Taktu's but no less commanding. Nunik's sister Ila stands beside him, her hands clutching a small bone carving of a seal, her eyes wide with the seriousness of the moment. The ritual begins with a song, not the lively beat of the Aurora dance but a slow, mournful melody that seems to rise from the sea itself. Atuat speaks of the seals, thanking them for their sacrifice, promising their spirits will be honored. Nunik steps forward, his hand steady as he places a bundle of seal fat into the water. He thinks of his grandmother Sila, who taught him to whisper a quiet thank you to every animal he takes. "You gave us life," he murmurs, his breath clouding in the chilly air. "We will not forget you." The villagers follow, each adding their offerings, bones, fat, small carvings into the sea. The children, including Ila, scatter handfuls of snow into the water, a gesture that symbolizes purity and renewal. The ritual is simple but profound, a reminder that every hunt is a pact, a cycle of give and take. Nunik feels the weight of it, not just as a hunter but as part of a community that depends on the sea's mercy. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctic's sacred waters, please subscribe, it really helps keep these stories flowing. Let's keep moving though, because the sea is calling us deeper. Not all sea rituals were so calm. In Kalas village, there was a time when the seals didn't return for weeks, the ice empty, the hunters returning with nothing but frostbite hands. The elders whispered of a greater offense. Perhaps a hunter who had boasted too loudly or taken more than needed. Taktu led a different ritual then, one that felt heavier, almost desperate. He entered a trance at the sea's edge, his body swaying as he sang to Sedna, his voice pleading for her forgiveness. The villagers offered not just fat and bones but a prized harpoon, its shaft carved with intricate patterns, a sacrifice that pained them all. Kala, standing nearby, felt the tension, the fear that Sedna might turn her back forever. The ritual worked, or so the village believed when the seals returned days later. But it left a mark on Kala, a reminder of how fragile their world was. She began to notice the smaller rituals, the daily acts of respect, the way hunters cleaned their tools with care, the way women sewed sealskin with prayers woven into each stitch. These were the threads that held the village together, the quiet offerings that kept Sedna's favor. In Nunik's time, these traditions endure. He learns to carve bone charms, not just for rituals but for everyday hunts, small tokens to carry Sedna's blessing. He watches his mother Isla teach Isla to prepare seal fat with reverence, wrapping it in sinew as if wrapping a gift. The sea is not just a source of food but a partner, a spirit that demands respect. Nunik feels this as he hunts his harpoon, steady, his heart full of the stories that guide him. As we step into the next chapter, we'll follow the young like Nunik and Isla into the rituals that mark their passage into adulthood. The sea's silence lingers, but the Arctic is alive with new challenges, new rites that test the courage and spirit of those who face its trials. The ice is calling, and its stories are far from over. The weight of the blood, rites of initiation, the sea's quiet offering still lingers in Nunik's mind as he kneels by the shore, the cold seeping through his sealskin boots. The ritual for Sedna was a moment of gratitude, a way to honor the animals that sustain his village, but it was also a reminder of his place in the vast web of the Arctic. Now, as the brief spring light softens the ice, Nunik feels a new weight, a different kind of ritual looms, one that will mark his passage from youth to manhood. The Inuit have long tested their young through rites of initiation, ceremonies that bind them to the land, the spirits, and their people. Tonight, we step into these trials, where blood and courage weave the stories of those who must prove themselves under the Arctic's unyielding gaze. Initiation rites were not mere traditions for the Inuit. They were survival itself. The Arctic demanded strength, skill, and a deep respect for its rules. A young hunter needed to navigate the ice, read the sky, and honor the spirits, or the entire village could suffer. These rites were as varied as the communities that practiced them, but they shared a common thread. They pushed the young to their limits, testing their bodies and spirits in ways that mirrored the land's harshness. For Nunik, now 8, the time has come to face his own trial, a moment that will echo the stories of those who came before him, like Kala in her distant village. Let's step back to Kala's time, a generation earlier, where the ice still holds the land in its grip. Kala, now in her late 20s, has grown into a woman respected for her dreams and her quiet strength. But her younger brother Kamet is 15, his face still soft but his hands already rough from hauling nets. The village is preparing for a ritual to mark his transition to manhood, a ceremony known as the Hunter's Trial. It's a test of endurance and skill, but also of respect for the spirits. A way to prove Kamat can carry the weight of the village's survival. The trial begins. At dawn, when the sky is a pale gray, the air sharp with the promise of spring, Kamat stands before the elders, his breath clouding in the cold, his harpoon clutched tightly. Taktu the Angakuk presides, his voice steady as he speaks of the spirits that will watch Kamat's journey. The task is daunting. Kamat must travel, alone across the ice to a distant hunting ground, track a caribou, and return with its hide and meat. But it's not just the hunt that matters. He must follow the rituals, offer thanks to the animal's spirit, return its bones to the land, and carve a charm from its antler as a gift to Sila. The air spirit Kala watches, her heart tight with worry. She remembers her own initiation, not as a hunter but as a weaver of dreams, when Taktu made her fast for 2 days and sing to the aurora until her voice broke. Comet's trial is different, more physical but no less sacred. The village gathers to see him off, their faces a mix of pride and fear. Nyack, their mother, places a small bone amulet in Comet's hand, whispering words of courage. The elders sing a low chant, their voices blending with the wind, asking Sila to guide his steps. Comet's journey is grueling. The ice is treacherous, cracking under his weight, and the wind bites at his face. He travels for 2 days, his sled light but his heart heavy with the knowledge that failure could shame his family. On the 3rd day he spots a caribou, its antlers stark against the snow. His hands shake as he readies his harpoon, but he pauses, as Taktu taught him, to whisper a prayer to the animal's spirit. "Thank you for your life," he says, his voice barely audible. The hunt is swift, the caribou falling cleanly, but Comet's work is far from done. He skins it with care, saving every part, and buries the bones in the snow, a gift to the land. The return is harder. A storm brews, the sky darkening with Sila's anger. Comet's strength falters, but he clings to the amulet, remembering his mother's words. When he stumbles back into the village, his face frostbitten, his sled heavy with meat, the community erupts in quiet pride. Taktu examines the hide, the charm, the careful way Kamet honored the caribou. The ritual ends with a feast, the meat shared among the families, and Comet's voice joins the elders' song for the first time, a sign he is now a man. Back in Inuit's time, his own trial looms. The village has chosen a similar rite, but with a twist that reflects their closeness to the sea. Inuit must hunt a seal alone, not on the open water but through a breathing hole in the ice, a task that demands patience and precision. Atuat, the Angakuk, prepares him, teaching him the chants to honor Sedna and the seal's spirit. Inuit's sister Isla watches with wide eyes, her hands busy sewing a new parka for him, a gift for his journey. The village gathers, their faces lit by the faint spring sun, and Inuit feels the weight of their trust that the trial begins at the edge of the frozen sea, where the ice is thick but dotted with breathing holes. Inuit kneels, his harpoon ready, his breath slow to avoid startling the seals. Hours pass, the cold seeping into his bones, but he remains still, as Atuat taught him. He thinks of Kamet, of Kala, of the stories that tie him to his ancestors. When a seal surfaces, its eyes dark and knowing, Inuit strikes, his aim true. He pulls it onto the ice, his hands shaking not from cold but from awe. He pours water into its mouth, as his grandmother Scylla once showed him, and whispers thanks to its spirit. The return to the village is a test of endurance. The ice is slick, the wind relentless, but Inuit's heart is steady. He carries the seal's body, its fat and skin carefully preserved, and presents it to Atuat. The ritual ends with a ceremony, smaller than Comet's but no less meaningful. The village shares the meat, and Inuit carves a small seal figure from bone, placing it in the sea as an offering to Sedna Isla Beams. Her parka now worn proudly by her brother, and Atuat nods, her eyes warm with approval. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctic's trials, please subscribe, it helps keep these stories alive. Let's keep moving though, because the ice is calling us onward. These rites were not just about proving strength, they were about proving respect. Comet's careful handling of the caribou, Inuit's quiet prayer to the seal, these acts tied them to the spirits, to the land, to their people. Failure wasn't just personal, it could disrupt the village's harmony. In Kala's time, a boy who failed his trial was sent out again, his shame a heavy burden until he succeeded. The rituals were unforgiving, but they forged bonds that lasted a lifetime. Inuit feels this as he sits by the lamp, the village's songs still echoing in his ears. He's a man now, but the weight of that title is heavy. He thinks of Isla, who will soon face her own initiation, perhaps as a weaver or a keeper of stories. The Arctic demands that everyone contribute, that everyone learn its ways. These rites are not endings but beginnings, steps into a life of responsibility. As we step into the next chapter, we'll follow the youngest of the Inuit like Ila into the rituals that welcomed them into the world. The rites of birth and naming were as sacred as those of the hunt, tying the newborn to the spirits and the community. The Arctic story continues, its threads weaving through every life, from the first breath to the final hunt. The thread of life, rituals of birth and naming, the warmth of the seal meat shared after Inuit's initiation lingers in the village, a quiet celebration of his passage into manhood. As he sits by the lamp, its flickering light casting shadows on the igloo's walls, Inuit feels the weight of his new role, but also a spark of pride. His sister Isla, now 12, watches him with a mix of awe and anticipation, knowing her own trials are not far off. Yet, before the tests of adulthood, every Inuit begins with rituals that tie them to the world from their very first breath. The Arctic is a place of beginnings as much as endings, and the rites of birth and naming wove newborns into the spiritual and communal web of their people. Tonight we trace these delicate threads, stepping into the ceremonies that welcomed the youngest Inuit into the frozen embrace of their world. For the Inuit, birth was not just a physical event but a spiritual one, a moment when a new soul joined the cycle of life. The spirits of ancestors were believed to linger, waiting to return in the bodies of the newborn. Naming a child was a sacred act, a way to honor those who came before while ensuring the child's place in the community and the cosmos. These rituals were intimate, often held within the warmth of an igloo, but they carried the weight of centuries, connecting the child to the land, the sea, and the spirits like Scylla and Sedna. Every name was a story, every birth a promise to the future. Let's slip back to Kala's village. A generation before Inuit, where the ice still holds the land in its grip. Kala, now in her late 20s, is present for a birth in her family. Her cousin, Aput, has just given birth to a daughter, a tiny bundle wrapped in sealskin, her cries soft against the howl of the wind outside. The village is small, and every new life is a victory against the Arctic's harshness. The elders gather in Aput's igloo, the air thick with the scent of burning seal fat and the warmth of shared hope. Takto, the anger cook, is there, his presence a reminder that this birth is not just a family matter but a communal one. The ritual begins quietly, as most Inuit ceremonies do. Aput's mother, Nyack, who is also Kala's mother, takes the lead. She's known for her skill in midwifery, her hands steady from years of bringing children into the world. She washes the newborn with melted snow, warmed over the lamp, a gesture that ties the child to Scylla, the spirit of the air. The water is sprinkled gently, each drop a prayer for strength. Kala watches, her heart full, remembering the stories Nyack told her about her own birth, how she was named for a dream of the aurora's light. The naming comes next, a moment heavy with meaning. The Inuit believed that a child's name carried the spirit of an ancestor, a way to keep the dead alive in the living. Taktu speaks softly, his voice like the rustle of snow, asking the spirits to guide the choice. The elders discuss, their voices low, recalling those who have recently passed. Aput suggests the name of her grandmother, Tulamak, a woman known for her laughter and her skill with the needle. The elders nod, but Taktu pauses, his eyes distant. He's seen a sign in his dreams, a raven circling under the aurora. He suggests combining Tulamak with another name, Kila, meaning sky, to honor the spirits above. The name is sealed with a ritual. Nyack wraps a cord of sinew around the child's wrist, a symbol of her tie to the community. The cord is adorned with a single raven feather, a nod to Taktu's vision. The villagers sing, their voices soft and melodic, a lullaby that seems to blend with the wind outside. Kala joins in, her voice trembling with emotion. The song is not just for the child, but for Tulimak, whose spirit they believe has returned. The ritual ends with an offering, a small piece of seal fat placed in the lamp, its flame flaring briefly as if the spirits approve. This naming ceremony was more than tradition. It was a way to weave the child into the village's story. The Inuit believed that a name carried power, that it could shape a child's destiny. A child named for a strong hunter might grow to be skilled with a harpoon. One named for a dreamer, like Kala, might see visions. But a name also came with responsibility. The child was expected to honor the ancestor, to live in a way that respected their memory. For little Tulumakila, this meant learning the ways of the village, from sewing to singing, from respecting the sea to reading the sky. Fast forward to Nunik's time, where these rituals remain sacred. Nunik's aunt Kamuti has just given birth to a son, a sturdy boy with eyes like the dark water of the sea. The village gathers in Kamuti's igloo, the air warm despite the spring chill outside. Otuat, the anger cook, leads the ceremony, her presence calm but commanding. Nunik is there, his new status as a man giving him a place among the adults. Isla, his sister, stands close, her hands clutching a small bone charm she carved for the baby, her face bright with excitement. Artuet begins by washing the child with snowmelt, her hands gentle but sure. She speaks of Sila, of the air that carries life, and sprinkles water over the baby's head. The naming is a careful process. Kamuti wants to honor her father Saiku, a hunter who died in a storm 2 winters ago. But Otuat, like Taktu before her, has seen a Sina whale breaching under the moonlight. She suggests adding Natik, meaning seal, to tie the child to the sea. The name Psychonatic is chosen, a blend of memory and hope. The ritual unfolds. With quiet reverence, Otuet ties a sinew cord around the baby's wrist, adorned with a tiny seal carving. The villagers sing, their voices rising like waves, a song that welcomes Psychonatic into the world. Nunik sings too, his deep voice blending with Ila's higher one, and he feels a connection to his father, to his grandmother, to all those whose names live on. The ceremony ends with an offering to Sedna, a strip of seal fat placed in the sea, a promise that the child will respect her gifts. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctic's beginnings, please subscribe, it helps to keep these stories alive. Let's keep moving though, because the ice is calling us onward. These rituals were not without their challenges. In Kala's time, a birth sometimes brought fear. If a child was born during a storm, the elders might see it as a sign of Sila's unrest, requiring extra offerings to calm her. Kala remembers a time when a newborn struggled to breathe. and Taktu led a ritual that lasted through the night, singing to drive away a spirit that clung to the child. The village held its breath, their songs a desperate plea, until the baby's cries finally rang out. In Inuit's village, the rituals are simpler but no less vital. Isla, watching the naming of Psychonatic, begins to understand her own place in this cycle. She's not yet ready for her own initiation, but she feels the pull of the traditions, the way they tie her to her brother, her aunt, her people. Inuit notices her quiet determination, the way she carves charms with care, and he knows she'll carry these rituals forward. As we step into the next chapter, we'll follow the Inuit through their darkest moments, into the rituals that honored the dead and eased the pain of loss. The thread of life continues, but it leads us now to the silence of mourning, where the spirits of the departed linger in the Arctic's embrace. The echo of the pain, rituals of grief and loss. The soft glow of the lamp in Kamuti's igloo still warms Inuit's memory as he steps outside. The newborn Psychonatic's cries fading into the Arctic night. The naming ritual, with its songs and offerings, was a moment of hope, a weaving of a new life into the village's tapestry. But the Arctic is a place of contrasts, where joy and sorrow walk hand in hand. And the rituals that welcome life are mirrored by those that honor death. Loss was a constant companion in the Inuit world, where a storm could claim a hunter or hunger could steal a child. Tonight, we tread softly into the rituals of grief, where the Inuit faced their pain with ceremonies that echoed across the ice, binding the living to the spirits of those who have passed. For the Inuit, death was not an end but a transition. The spirits of the dead did not vanish. They lingered in the aurora, in the wind, in the names given to newborns like Psychonatic, but loss left wounds, and the rituals of mourning were a way to heal, to honor the departed, and to ensure that spirits found peace. These ceremonies were quiet, intimate, yet heavy with meaning, carried out with the same reverence as offerings to Setna or dances under the aurora. They were a reminder that every life, no matter how brief, was part of the Arctic's great cycle. Let's return to Kala's village, a generation before Inuit, where the cold bites deeper as winter tightens its grip. Kala, now in her 30s, stands in the kag, her breath visible in the dim light. The village is mourning the loss of Nyack, her mother, who passed in the night, her laughter silenced by a sudden illness. Nyack was the heart of the community, her hands skilled in midwifery, her voice a guide in rituals. Her death leaves a void, and Kala feels it like a weight in her chest. Taktu the Ango cook is there, his face more lined than ever, his eyes heavy with shared grief. The village gathers, not in celebration but in quiet sorrow, to send Nyack's spirit to the sky. The ritual begins with silence, a stark contrast to the songs of birth or the drums of the Aurora dance. The villagers sit in a circle, their hands resting on their knees, their eyes on the small bundle of Nyack's belongings, her needle, her sealskin pouch, a raven feather she loved. Taktu speaks first, his voice low, recounting Nyack's life, her strength in bringing children into the world, her songs that calmed storms, her laughter that warmed the coldest nights. Kala listens, tears freezing on her cheeks, as Taktu calls to the spirits, asking them to guide Nyack to the aurora, where she can join the sky dancers. The ceremony is simple but deliberate. Kala's cousin Aput brings a small sealskin drum, one Nyack used in rituals. She strikes it once, a single beat that echoes like a heartbeat. The villagers hum, a soft, mournful sound that seems to rise into the snow-heavy air. Kala is given the task of preparing Nyack's body, a duty both painful and sacred. She wraps her mother in caribou hide, tying it with sinew, and places a small bone charm in her hands, carved to resemble a seal. The charm is an offering to Sedna, ensuring Nyack's spirit will be welcomed in the sea's depths if she chooses to linger there. The body is carried to a cairn of stones, built on a hill overlooking the sea. The Inuit did not bury their dead in the frozen ground. Instead, they placed them above, surrounded by rocks, so their spirits could rise to the sky or return to the land. Kala lays Nyack's body gently, her hands trembling, and scatters snow over the cairn, a final act of purity. Taktu chants, his voice rising and falling like the tide, asking Sila to carry Nyack's spirit upward. The villagers stand in silence, the wind their only companion, until the ritual ends and they return to their igloos carrying their grief like a shared burden. This ritual, known as the spirit's journey, was not about erasing pain but honoring it. The Inuit believed that a spirit left too soon could linger, causing unrest. By performing the ritual correctly, they ensured the departed found their place among the spirits, whether in the aurora or the sea. Kala feels this as she sits by the lamp later, her fingers tracing the pattern of Nyack's needle. She knows her mother's spirit lives on, perhaps in the newborn Tulamakakila, perhaps in the wind that whispers outside. In Inuit's time, these rituals remain a vital thread. A year after Psychonatic's birth, the village faces its own loss. Inuit's father Kimir, a quiet hunter whose steady hands taught Inuit to carve, is lost in a storm while hunting on the ice. The news comes like a blow, and Inuit feels the world tilt. Atuat, the Anga cook, calls the village to the Kagik, her presence a steady anchor in their grief. Inuit stands with Isla, her her small hand clutching his, her eyes red but fierce. Kamuti, their aunt, is there too, her newborn son strapped to her back. A reminder of life's persistence, Atuet begins the ritual with a chant, her voice softer than Taktu's but no less powerful. She speaks of Kimia's life, his skill with a harpoon, his patience with Nunik and Ela, his quiet offerings to the sea. The villagers bring Kimia's tools, his harpoon, his bow knife, a small carving of a walrus he made, and place them in a circle around a seal oil lamp. Ela steps forward, her hands shaking, and places a sealskin cord beside the lamp, one she braided for her father. Nunik watches, his throat tight, as Otuat sprinkles snow over the offerings, a gesture to cleanse and release. The body is prepared. With care, Nunik and Kamuti wrap Kimir in caribou hide, tying it with sinew, and place a bone amulet in his hands, carved with the shape of a caribou. They carry him to a cairn on a rise overlooking the village, the sea glinting in the distance. Atuet chants, her voice blending with the wind, asking Sela and Sedna to guide Kimir's spirit. The villagers hum, their voices a low, steady pulse, and Nunik joins in, his voice breaking but resolute. The ritual ends with silence, the cairn standing as a quiet sentinel under the stars. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctics of sorrows, please subscribe. It helps keep these stories alive. Let's keep moving though, because the ice is calling us onward. These rituals were not just for the dead but for the living. In Kala's time, the village lingered after Nayak's ritual, sharing stories of her life over a meal of seal meat. It was a way to weave her memory into their daily lives, to keep her spirit close. Kala took up her mother's role as a midwife, feeling Nayak's presence in every birth she attended. The rituals gave her strength, a way to carry her grief without letting it consume her. In Unik's village, the loss of Kimia changes the rhythm of life. Unik takes on more responsibility, his hunts now feeding not just his family but Kamuti's as well. Isla, though young, begins to carve charms with greater care, as if channeling her father's quiet skill. The rituals of mourning bind them closer, a reminder that grief is shared, that no one faces the Arctic's trials alone. As we step into the next chapter, we'll follow the Inuit into moments of play, where rituals took the form of games and competitions that strengthened the community. The pain of loss lingers, but the Arctic's story is also one of resilience, of finding joy in the face of hardship. The ice is calling, and its games are waiting. The game of the bone, ritual competitions. The silence of Kimir's cairn still lingers in Unik's heart as he returns to the village. The weight of his father's absence heavy but softened by the ritual that honored his spirit. The Arctic, though, is not a place that allows grief to linger unchecked. It demands resilience, a spark of joy to balance its harshness. As the spring sun climbs higher, casting a pale glow over the snow, the village stirs with a different energy. Laughter echoes from the Kagik, where children chase each other, their voices bright against the creak of ice. Tonight, we step into the rituals that brought joy through competition, where games of skill and strength were not just play but sacred acts, weaving the Inuit closer to each other and the spirits. These were the games of the bone, where the Arctic's pulse beat in every leap and throw. For the Inuit, games were more than amusement. They were rituals that strengthened the community, tested its members, and honored the spirits. In a world where survival depended on cooperation, these competitions built trust and camaraderie, reminding everyone that even in the coldest winters, there was room for laughter. The games often carried spiritual weight, tied to the land, the animals, or the ancestors, their rules passed down through generations. There were moments when the village could breathe, setting aside the fear of hunger or storms to celebrate their resilience. Let's slip back to Kala's village, a generation before Nunik, where the air is warming with the promise of summer. Kala, now in her 30s, has taken on her mother Niak's role as a keeper of stories and a midwife, her hand steady but her heart still tender from loss. The village is preparing for a gathering, a ritual competition called the Bone Game, held to mark the return of the sun. It's a time when the days grow longer and the caribou begin their migration, a signal that the spirits are smiling. The Anga cook oversees the event, his presence a reminder that even play is sacred. The bone game is simple but demanding. The men compete in a series of challenges, throwing a carved bone spear at a target, wrestling on the snow, and a race across the ice to a distant marker. The women and children have their own contests, from sewing competitions to storytelling, where the best tale earns a prized sealskin. The winners are not just celebrated for skill but for embodying the spirit's favor. Kala's brother Kamat, now a young man who passed his hunter's trial, is eager to prove himself. Kala watches her hands clutching a small charm she carved for him, a raven to guide his aim. The Kagik is alive with energy as the village gathers. The air smells of seal fat and smoked fish, the lamps casting a warm glow. Taktu begins with a chant, his voice calling to the spirits of the caribou in the wind, asking for strength and fairness. The men line up, their spears carved from walrus tusk, each marked with patterns that honor their families. Comet's throw is strong but wild, the spear landing just shy of the target. The crowd laughs, not in mockery but in shared joy, and Kamet grins, undeterred. The wrestling follows, his body twisting against another hunter's, their breath clouding in the cold. He loses again, but his effort earns nods from the elders. Kala joins the women's competition, telling a story of a great hunter who outwitted a polar bear, her voice weaving through the Kagik like a thread. The children listen wide-eyed as she describes the bear's spirit joining the aurora, her tailwinds, and she's given a sealskin, soft and warm, a gift she shares with Aput's daughter Tulamakila. The ritual ends with a feast, the village sharing caribou meat and songs, their laughter rising like smoke. Taktu speaks of the spirits, how they delight in the people's joy, how the games strengthen the bonds that hold the village together. Fast forward to Nunique's time, where the bone game remains a cherished ritual. The village is still mourning Kimia, but the coming of summer brings a chance to heal. Atuit, the Angakuk, calls for a competition to honor the sun's return, and Nunique feels a spark of excitement. He's a man now, his initiation behind him, but this is a chance to prove his strength in a new way. Isla, his sister, is eager too, her hands busy carving a small bone figure for the children's contest. The village gathers in the Kagik, the air filled with the scent of burning fat and the chatter of anticipation. Atuet begins with a song, her voice clear and strong, thanking Sila for the light that warms the ice. The men's competition mirrors. Comet's time, a spear throw, a wrestling match, a race across the snow. Nunique's throw is precise, the bone spear striking the target's center, earning cheers from the crowd. He wrestles next, his body straining against her friends, their laughter mixing with the effort. He doesn't win, but his strength is clear, and Atuet nods, her eyes warm with approval. Isla joins the children's contest, presenting her bone, carving a seal with intricate patterns. Her work is praised, though a younger girl's story of Sedna wins the day. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctic's joyful rituals, please subscribe, it helps keep these stories alive. Let's keep moving though, because the ice is calling us onward. The bone game was not without its deeper meaning. In Kalas village, a poor throw or a lost match could be seen as a sign of spiritual imbalance. Taktu once paused the games, when a young hunter's spear broke, interpreting it as a warning from the spirits. The village offered a small bone carving to Sedna, buried in the snow, before continuing. The ritual was a reminder that even play was tied to the unseen, that the spirits watched every move. In Nunique's time, the games carry the same weight. He feels his father's absence keenly, but the competition gives him a way to honor Kimir's memory. He carves a small walrus figure, like the one his father made, and places it beside the target, a quiet offering to the spirits. Isla, too, feels the connection, her carving a way to keep Kimir's skill alive. The village shares a meal after, their voices blending in a song that feels like a bridge to the past. These competitions were not just about winning but about belonging. They reminded the Inuit that their strength lay in community, in the shared laughter and effort that defied the Arctic's cold. For Nunique, the games are a chance to feel his father's pride, to see Ila's growing skill, to know that the village endures. The rituals of play were as vital as those of mourning or hunting, a way to weave joy into the fabric of survival as we step into the next chapter. We'll follow the Inuit into the heart of winter, where rituals of survival took on a new urgency. The games fade, but their warmth lingers, guiding us toward the ceremonies that kept the people alive in the darkest, coldest months. The Arctic's story continues, its pulse beating strong beneath the ice. The embrace of the cold, rituals of winter survival, the laughter of the bone game still rings in Nunique's ears as he steps out of the Kagik. The summer light fading into the encroaching chill of autumn. The joy of the competition, with its spear, throws and stories, lingers like a warm breath, but the Arctic is relentless, and winter looms like a shadow on the horizon. The games strengthened the village's spirit, binding them through shared effort, but now the cold demands a different kind of ritual, ceremonies born of necessity, designed to endure the darkest, most brutal months. Tonight, we wrap ourselves in the embrace of the cold, exploring the rituals that helped the Inuit survive the Arctic winter, where every act was a defiance of the ice's grip. Winter in the Arctic was a crucible, a season that could last 6 months or more, with temperatures plunging to 40 degrees below 0 Celsius. The sun vanished, leaving only a twilight glow, and the sea froze into a vast, unyielding plain. For the Inuit, survival meant preparation, skill, and a deep trust in the spirits that governed the land. Their rituals of winter were not grand spectacles but quiet, deliberate acts, offerings to Sila, the air spirit, chants to keep the community strong, and practices to ensure the Iglis held against the storms. These ceremonies were as vital as food or fire, weaving resilience into the fabric of their lives. Let's slip back to Kala's village, a generation before Nunique, where the first snows are falling, heavy and relentless. Kala, now in her mid, has grown into her role as a keeper of stories and a midwife, her dreams still guiding her. The village is preparing for winter, their hands busy sewing parkas, repairing sleds, and storing sealfat. But there's a tension in the air. Winter was harsh, with storms that buried Iglis and a hunger that left the children pale. Takto, the Angakuk, calls for a ritual to strengthen the village, to ask Sila for mercy and the animals for their return. The ceremony, known as the Winter's Pact, begins in the Kagak, its walls reinforced with fresh snow to withstand the coming blizzards. The air smells of burning fat and dried herbs, a sharp contrast to the icy wind outside. The villagers gather, their faces lit by the lamps, their hands clutching small offerings, bone carvings, strips of sinew, a single raven, feather. Kala's brother Kamet, now a seasoned hunter, stands beside her, his spear laid carefully before him. Taktu begins with a chant, his voice low and rhythmic, calling to Sila to calm her storms, to Sedna to send seals through the ice. The ritual is practical as much as spiritual. Taktu instructs the villagers to check their igloos to pack snow tightly around the bases, a physical act tied to the spiritual plea for protection. Kala helps Aput, her cousin, weave a sealskin curtain for the igloo's entrance, each stitch a prayer for warmth. The men carve small figures from caribou antler seals, bears, ravens and place them in a circle around the lamp, symbols of the animals they'll need to survive. The children, including Aput's daughter, Talimakila, scatter snow in patterns outside, a gesture to honor Sila's breath. The chant grows louder, the villagers' voices blending into a steady hum, a sound that feels like it could hold back the cold. But the ritual has a deeper purpose. Taktu speaks of unity, of the need to share food and warmth, to check on the elders and the young. He tells a story of a winter long ago when the village ignored these rituals, and Sila sent a storm that lasted weeks, trapping hunters and emptying stores. The lesson is clear. Survival depends on the community, on the spirits, on the rituals that bind them. Kala feels this as she sings, her voice steady despite the ache of her mother's absence. The ritual ends with an offering, a bundle of seal fat buried in the snow, a gift to Sila and the land. Fast forward to Nunik's time, where winter's approach brings the same urgency. The village is still healing from Kimia's loss, but the games have renewed their spirit. Nunik, now a man, takes on his father's role, checking sleds and sharpening tools. Atuit, the Angokuak, calls for a similar ritual, gathering the village in the Kagak. Isla, Nunik's sister, is there, her hands busy with a bone carving of a seal, her face serious as she learns the winter's ways. Kamuti, their aunt, cradles Psychonatic, the newborn, whose warmth is a reminder of life's persistence. Ritual mirrors Taktu's but carries her own touch. She begins with a song, her voice clear and haunting, thanking Sila for the snow that builds their homes and Sedna for the animals that feed them. The villagers bring offerings, small carvings, strips of sinew, a feather from a ptarmigan. Nunik places a walrus tusk charm beside the lamp, one his father Kimia carved, its weight heavy in his hand. Isla scatters snow outside, her movements careful, mimicking the patterns she saw in the Aurora dance. The men reinforce the igloos, packing snow tightly, while the women sew extra layers into pakas, their needles flashing in the lamplight. The ritual includes a teaching moment. As At speaks of the winter's dangers, she tells of a hunter who ignored the signs of a storm and was lost, his spirit wandering until the village made offerings to guide him. Nunik listens, his heart tight. Thinking of Kimia, he vows to watch the sky, to honor the spirits, to keep his family safe. The ceremony ends with a shared meal, seal meat and dried berries, each bite a promise to endure. Otuat places a bundle of fat in the snow, her hands steady, and the village falls silent, the wind their only companion. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctic's winter heart, please subscribe, it helps keep these stories alive. Let's keep moving though, because the cold is calling us onward. Winter rituals were not without their challenges. In Kala's time, a failed ritual could bring fear. Once, when the storms didn't relent, Taktu led a second ceremony, entering a trance to speak with Sila. The village waited, their breath held, as he swayed, his voice pleading. They offered more, a prized harpoon tip, buried in the snow. The storms eased, or so they believed. Kala learned then that rituals were acts of faith, not guarantees, but they gave the village strength to face the cold. In Unik's village, the rituals are simpler but no less vital. Isla begins to take on more responsibility, helping Kamuti store food, her hands learning the rhythm of survival. Nunik watches her, proud but protective, knowing the winter will test them all. He carves a new charm, a bear this time, and places it in his igloo, a quiet prayer for strength. The rituals tie him to Kala, to Kamet, to all those who faced the Arctic's winters before. As we step into the next chapter, we'll follow the Inuit into rituals of union, ceremonies that bound families and clans through marriage and shared promises. The cold lingers, but its embrace is softened by the warmth of community, guiding us toward stories of connection and love. The Arctic's tale continues, its threads weaving through the snow, the fire hidden within. Rituals of union and community. The soft crunch of snow under Nunik's boots still carries the memory of the winter ritual, where offerings to Sila and Sedna fortified the village against the Arctic's relentless cold. The warmth of the shared meal, the steady hum of Atuit's chant, lingers in his heart, a reminder that survival is not just about enduring but about coming together. As the winter deepens, the village turns inward, not just to huddle against the storms but to strengthen the bonds that hold them fast. Tonight we step into the rituals of union, ceremonies that wove families and clans into a single thread, where love, promises, and shared fires kindled hope in the darkest months. These were the moments when the Inuit found warmth not just in sea-loyal lambs but in each other. For the Inuit union was more than a personal bond. It was a communal act, a weaving of lives that strengthened the village against the Arctic's trials. Marriages, partnerships, and clan alliances were sealed with rituals that honored the spirits and the ancestors, ensuring that new ties would endure. These ceremonies were often quiet, held in the intimacy of an igloo or kagik, but they carried a weight as profound as any hunt or initiation. The rituals of union were a fire hidden within the ice, a spark that kept the community alive through shared promises and trust. Let's return to Kalos village, a generation before Inuit, where the snow falls thickly, blanketing the world in silence. Kala, now in her late 30s, is a respected figure, her dreams and stories guiding the village. The winter has been kind so far, the stores full from a good hunt, and the elders decide it's time for a union ritual to bind to families. Kala's brother Kamet, now a skilled hunter, is to join with Sana, a woman from a neighboring clan known for her deft hands at sewing and her sharp wit. The ceremony is not just about them but about uniting their clans, ensuring shared resources and strengths for the seasons ahead. The ritual, called the fire binding, takes place in the kagik, its walls glowing faintly from the lamps. The air smells of burning fat and dried herbs, a scent that feels like home to Kala. The Angakuk presides, his voice steady as he calls to the spirits of the ancestors, asking their blessing. Kamat and Sana stand at the center, their hands clasped, their faces flushed in the warmth. Kala watches, her heart full, remembering her mother Nyak's stories of her own union, how she and Kala's father wove sinew together as a promise. The ceremony begins with an offering. Sana's mother presents a sealskin, soft and carefully tanned, a symbol of her daughter's skill. Kamat's family offers a carved harpoon tip, its bone etched with patterns of waves and stars, tacked 2 places, both in a circle around a small lamp, its flame flickering like a heartbeat. The villagers sing, their voices soft but strong, a melody that speaks of unity and endurance. Kala joins in, her voice blending with Aput's, her cousin, who cradles young Tulamakila in her arms. The song is a promise, not just between Kamat and Sana but to the spirits, ensuring the couple's bond will strengthen the village. The central act is the weaving of a cord. Kamat and Sana each hold a strip of sinew, their hands moving together to braid it into a single strand. Taktu guides them, his words slow and deliberate, speaking of the strength that comes from becoming one. The cord is tied around their wrists, a symbol of their union, and sprinkled with snowmelt to honor Sila. The ritual ends with a shared milkaroo stew and dried fish each bite, a pledge to support the new couple. Kala feels a pang of joy, seeing Kamat's smile, knowing this bond will carry the village forward. In new next time. These rituals remain a cornerstone of community. The winter is harsh, the loss of Kimia still fresh, but the village finds strength in new unions. Nunik's friend Toktu, a quiet hunter with a knack for carving, is to join with Naya, a woman whose laughter fills the igloo. Atwat the Ank calls for a fire binding in the kagik, and Nunik feels a spark of hope. Isla, now 13, is there, her hands busy with a gift for Naya, small bone charm shaped like a seal. Kamuti, with young psychonetic strapped to her back, helps prepare the meal, her presence a reminder of family. Ottawat begins with a chant, a voice weaving through the kagik like smoke, thanking the ancestors for guiding Toktu and Naya. The couple stands together, their hands clasped, their parkas brushing against each other. Nunek watches, remembering his father's stories of his own union with Ayla, how they shared a cord. Under the stars, the offerings mirror those of Kala's time, a sealskin from Naya's family, a carved bone knife from Toktu's. Ottawat places them around a lamp, its flame steady despite the cold outside. The villagers sing, their voices rising and falling, and Ila's clear tone stands out, her pride evident. The braiding of the cord is the heart of the ritual. Toktu and Naya work together, their fingers clumsy at first but growing sure. Ottawa speaks of the spirits, of Sila's breath that binds them, of Sedna's gifts that will sustain them. The cord is tied around their wrists, sprinkled with snowmelt, and the villagers hum their voices a warm embrace. The meal follows seal meat and berries, shared in silence at first, then with laughter as Toktu tells a story of a failed hunt that ended in a tumble into the snow. Nunik laughs, his grief for Kimir easing in the warmth of the moment. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctic's bonds, please subscribe, it helps keep these stories alive. Let's keep moving though, because the fire is calling us onward. These rituals were not without their challenges. In Kalos' time, a union was once delayed when a storm-trapped Sanas clan, a sign the spirits were restless. Taktu led a small ritual, offering a bone carving to Silla, and the storm cleared, allowing the ceremony to proceed. Kala learned then that unions were not just personal but spiritual, tied to the land's rhythms. She helped Kamot and Sana settle into their new life, sharing her igloo's warmth. Her story is a guide for their future. In Nunik's village, the firebinding strengthens the community. Nunik takes on more hunts, knowing Taktu and Naya will share their stores. Isla begins to dream of her own future, her carvings growing more intricate, her voice stronger in the songs. The ritual reminds them that love is not just a feeling but a promise, a fire that burns even in the coldest nights. As we step into the next chapter, we'll explore the shadows of the Inuit world, the taboos and forbidden rituals that carried danger and mystery. The warmth of union lingers, but the Arctic holds secrets that test even the strongest bonds. The ice is calling, and its hidden stories await. Shadows in the snow, taboos and forbidden rituals, the warmth of Taktu and Naya's union still glows in Unik's heart as he steps out of the Kagik. The laughter and songs of the fire-binding ritual fading into the Arctic night, the braided cord around the couple's wrists, the shared meal, the flickering lamp reminders of the bonds that hold the village together. But even in this moment of unity, there's a quiet undercurrent, a whisper of caution that runs through the Inuit world. The Arctic is not just a place of light and community. It harbors shadows, rules that must not be broken, and rituals so potent they're rarely spoken of aloud. Tonight, we tread carefully into these shadows, exploring the taboos and forbidden ceremonies that carried danger and mystery, where the line between respect and fear was as thin as a crack in the ice. For the Inuit taboos were not mere superstitions. They were the guardrails of survival, rules woven into the fabric of their spiritual and physical world. To break a taboo, whether by disrespecting an animal's spirit, speaking ill of the dead, or defying the Angaku, could anger the spirits, bringing storms, famine, or worse. Some rituals were so sacred, so tied to the unseen forces, that they were performed in secret, away from the village's eyes. These forbidden ceremonies were not for celebration but for protection, for righting wrongs that threatened the community's balance. They were the shadows in the snow, whispered about in hushed tones, their power both revered and feared. Let's slip back to Kala's village, a generation before Nunek, where the winter is at its deepest, the darkness unbroken except by the faint glow of the aurora. Kala, now in her late 30s, carries the weight of her mother Nyak's stories and her own dreams, which have grown sharper, sometimes unsettling. The village is restless. A hunter, Yuki, the same man who once scattered seal bones carelessly, has broken another taboo. He boasted of killing a polar bear without offering thanks to its spirit, leaving its hide to rot on the ice. The elders whisper of Sedna's anger, and the seals have not returned for weeks. Taktu the Angaku calls for a ritual, but it's not one the village will witness. This is a shadow rite, a ceremony so potent it's held in secret. On the frozen sea under the cover of night, Kala is chosen to assist, not because she's an Angakuk but because her dreams have marked her as one who sees the spirits. She follows Taktu to the sea's edge, her heart pounding, the wind stinging her face. The ice is smooth, reflecting the aurora's faint green, and the air smells of salt and frost. Taktu carries a small bundle, a sealskin pouch filled with bone carvings and dried herbs, their scent sharp and bitter. No one else is present. The village waits in their igloos, their lamps dimmed, their voices silent. Kala feels the weight of their trust, but also their fear. This ritual is dangerous. A direct plea to Sedna to forgive Yuki's transgression. Taktu begins with a chant, his voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid the spirits might overhear too soon. He speaks of the bear, its strength, its spirit, and asks Sedna to release her anger. He cuts his palm with a bone knife, letting a few drops of blood fall onto the ice, a rare and shocking act that makes Kala flinch. The blood is an offering, a sign of the village's humility, a plea for balance. Taktu places the pouch into a hole in the ice, its contents sinking into the dark water. Kala's role is to hold a cord of sinew, anchoring Taktu as he enters a trance, his body swaying, his eyes clouded. She grips the cord tightly, her hands trembling, knowing that a failed ritual could bring worse than empty nets. The shadow rite is brief but intense. Taktu's chant grows louder then stops abruptly. He collapses, his breath shallow, and Kala pulls the cord, guiding him back. When he wakes, his voice is hoarse, but he nods. The spirits have heard. The village doesn't speak of the ritual, but when the seals return days later, they know it worked. Kala carries the memory like a stone, a reminder of the power and peril of the forbidden. She never speaks of it, not even to Kamit, but she feels the spirits closer now. Their presence a constant shadow in Unik's time. These taboos and secret rituals still hold sway. The village is preparing for another winter, the lessons of the fire binding fresh in their minds. But a young hunter, Kivyok, stirs unease. He's been reckless, laughing as he tossed caribou bones into the snow, ignoring Atuate's warnings. The elders murmur, and the caribou herds grow scarce, a sign of Sila's displeasure. Otuat, the Angakuk, decides a shadow rite is needed, one that Nunek is chosen to witness. Perhaps because of his steady hands or his father Kimira's quiet respect for the spirits. The ritual takes place far from the village, on a frozen lake under a sky heavy with clouds. Otuat carries a sealskin pouch, like Taktu's, filled with bone carvings and herbs. Nunik follows, his breath clouding, his heart heavy with the weight of secrecy. The air is thick with the scent of frost, and the ice groans beneath their feet. Otuat chants, her voice low and urgent, speaking to Sila and the caribou spirit. She doesn't cut her hand, but she sprinkles ash from a burned bone into the ice, a gesture of sacrifice. Nunik holds a sinew cord, his hand steady despite the cold, anchoring Otuat as she sways, her eyes distant. The ritual is silent, almost oppressive. The only sound, the wind and Atuat's chant. She places the pouch in a crack in the ice, letting it sink into the water below. Nunik feels a chill, not from the cold but from the sense of something watching. When Otuat returns from her trance, she's pale but resolute. The spirits have heard, she says, and they return to the village in silence. Days later, a caribou herd appears, and the village breathes easier, though Kiviok is quieter now, his bravado gone. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctic's shadows, please subscribe, it helps keep these stories alive. Let's keep moving though, because the ice is calling us onward. These shadow rites were rare, performed only when taboos were broken or the spirit's anger was clear. In Kala's time, another taboo, a woman speaking a dead hunter's name, too soon required a similar ritual. Taktu let it alone, his voice echoing across the ice, and the village waited, their lamps dim, until he returned. Kala learned then that taboos were not just rules but lifelines, keeping the community in balance with the unseen. In Unik's village, the taboos shape daily life. Isla, now learning the ways of the women, is careful to honor the animals. Her carvings always return to the sea or land. Nunik watches her, remembering his father's lessons, and vows to respect the spirits. The shadow rite leaves him changed, more aware of the delicate balance his people maintain. As we step into the final chapter, we'll reflect on the legacy of these rituals, connecting the Inuit's past to our present. The shadows linger, but they lead us to a light that endures. A story that ties Nunik, Kala and all their people to the Arctic's heart. The ice is calling, and its lessons await. The legacy of the ice, reflections from past to present. The weight of the shadow rite still clings to Nunik as he trudges back to the village, the frozen lake's silence echoing in his steps. The secret of offering to Sila, the whispered chants of Otuat and the faint hope of restored balance linger like the chill in his bones. The Arctic has woven its stories through Nunik's life, through hunts, initiations, births and losses, each ritual a thread in a tapestry that binds his people to the land, the sea and the spirits. As the stars pierce the endless night, casting their light over the snow, Nunik feels the presence of his father Kimir, his grandmother Silla, and all those who came before. Tonight, we step into the final chapter, reflecting on the legacy of these rituals, connecting the Inuit's past to our present, and finding meaning in the ice that still whispers their stories. The Inuit's rituals, whether joyful dances under the aurora, solemn offerings to Sedna, or forbidden rites in the shadows, were more than ceremonies. They were the heartbeat of a culture that thrived in one of the harshest places on earth. These practices were born from necessity, shaped by a world where survival demanded respect for the spirits and unity among the people. Yet their power lies not just in the past but in what they teach us today: resilience, connection, and a deep reverence for the world around us. As we trace the threads from Kala's time to Nunik's and from their villages to our modern world, we see a legacy that endures, as timeless as the ice itself. Let's linger with Kala one last time. In her village a generation ago, where the winter is fading into the brief Arctic spring, Kala, now nearing 40, stands on a rise overlooking the sea, the cairn of her mother Niak, a silent sentinel nearby. The shadow rite she assisted Taktu with still haunts her, its secrecy a reminder of the delicate balance her people maintained. She's become a keeper of stories, her dreams guiding the village through hunts and storms. The rituals she's witnessed, aurora dance, the sea offering, the fire binding, have shaped her, weaving her into the community's fabric. She thinks of her brother Kamit, now married to Sana, their union strengthening the clan, and of young Tulamakila, whose name carries the spirit of their grandmother. Kala's role has grown since Nyak's death. She leads the women in preparing offerings, her hands steady as she wraps seal fat in sinew. She teaches the children, including Tulamakila, the songs that honor Sila and Sedna, her voice blending with theirs in the Kagik. But she also carries a quiet fear, a knowledge that the spirits are not always kind. The shadow rite taught her that taboos are not just rules but lifelines, and she passes this lesson to the young, urging them to respect the animals, the ice, the sky. Her life is a bridge between the past and the future, her stories a way to keep the spirits alive. One spring, as the ice begins to crack, Kala leads a small ritual of her own. The village gathers to welcome the returning sun, a moment not of survival but of gratitude. They sing, their voices rising like the tide, and place small bone carvings in the snow, offerings to the spirits for a bountiful summer. Kala feels her mother's presence in the wind, her laughter in the children's voices. The ritual is simple, but it binds the village to its ancestors, to the land, to each other. As she sings, Kala knows her stories will live on, carried by Tulamakila and the next generation. Don't in Inuit's time, this legacy continues. The village is stronger now, the winter's rituals and the fire binding of Toktu and Nea weaving new threads of hope. Inuit at 19 is a hunter whose skill honors his father Kimir's memory. Isla, his sister, is growing into her own. Her carvings intricate, her voice steady in the songs. Artuet, the anger cook, remains their guide, her chants a constant in their lives. The shadow rite Inuit witnessed has left him quieter, more aware of the spirit's power. He carves a bear charm, like the one his father made, and places it in his igloo, a silent prayer for strength. One evening, as the village gathers in the Kagik, Artuet leads a ritual to mark the end of winter. It's not a grand ceremony, but a moment of reflection, a chance to give thanks for surviving the cold. The villagers bring small offerings, sealskin scraps, bone figures, a feather from a ptarmigan, and place them around a lamp, its flame steady in the dim light. Inuit's aunt Kamuti cradles Psychonatic, whose name carries the spirit of his grandfather. Isla sings, her voice clear and strong, and Inuit joins in, his deep tone blending with hers. The song is a tapestry, weaving together the rituals of birth, initiation, union, and loss. Artuet speaks, her voice soft but commanding, of the spirits that guide them, Scylla in the wind, Sedna in the sea, the ancestors in the aurora. She tells of Kala's time, of a woman whose dreams saved her village, whose stories live in their songs. Inuit listens, feeling a connection to this woman he never knew, her life a mirror to his own. The ritual ends with a shared meal, meat and dried berries, each bite a promise to carry the traditions forward. Inuit looks at Isla at Psychonatic and knows the legacy is safe. If you're enjoying this journey through the Arctic's heart, please subscribe, it helps keep these stories alive. Let's pause here though, to reflect on what we've learned. The Inuit's rituals were not just acts of faith but lessons in living. They taught respect for the land, for the animals, for each other. In Kala's time, a broken taboo could bring hunger, but a ritual could restore balance. In Inuit's time, the shadow rite reminded him that survival was a collective effort, a dance with the spirits. These ceremonies, whether joyful, solemn, or forbidden, were the Inuit's way of navigating a world that was both beautiful and brutal. They built igloos against storms, wove cords to bind lovers, and sang to honor the dead, each act a thread in a larger story today. The Inuit's legacy lives on, not just in their descendants but in the lessons they offer, their respect for the environment, their sense of community, their resilience in the face of hardship. These are gifts we can carry into our own lives. The Arctic may seem distant, its ice and snow far from our daily world, but its stories resonate. They remind us to listen to the wind, to honor the resources we use, to hold our communities close. The rituals of the Inuit, from the Aurora dance to the Shadow Rite, are a call to live with intention, to find balance in a world that can feel as unpredictable as a storm. As we leave Inuit's village, the stars above seem brighter, the snow softer underfoot. The rituals we've explored are not just relics of the past but living stories, carried in the names of children like Psychonatic, in the songs of women like Isla, in the quiet strength of men like Inuit. The Arctic's legacy is one of endurance, of finding light in the darkest winters, of weaving a life from the threads of ice and spirit. If you've enjoyed this journey through the bizarre and beautiful rituals of the Inuit, please subscribe. It means the world to keep these stories shining. The ice may be cold, but its lessons are warm, guiding us toward a deeper understanding of our place in the world.